Hey Booktube, it's Kim. No, that's not right. I'm not ready for my actual video yet. Hey Booktube, it's Kim at Middle of the Bookmarch, and this is my Bookish week for December 1st, 2024. It is now December. Wow. Now, pretty soon, I believe towards the end of this month, it may have already gone past, but I've been on Booktube for 5 years. I never would have thought I would have lasted 5 years. And as far as I can tell, I don't have any plans on leaving. So yeah, I mean, maybe it's another 5 years. I don't know. But thank you for everybody that's been watching and subscribing and commenting. You all are awesome. I've had a blast and I'd love to continue. So thank you. So what have I done last week? Last week I finished 2 books. One of them I'm not going to talk about here. I will probably wrap it up next week because it was a group reading project. But I forgot my notebook. Is it behind me? No, it's not. Hold on. All right, sorry about that. I have a notebook that I wrote some things down because one of the books I finished was on audio and I wanted to make sure I got the author's name and all of that. So the first book I finished was on audio, and it is titled Ultra Processed People, The Science Behind Food That Isn't Food by Chris Van Tulleken. And Van Tulleken is an MD and a PhD, I believe from Oxford University, and he's a professor at the University of London. And also a medical doctor. So he's got credentials. He's got credentials that I can believe in. This book, wow. Reading about ultra-processed food. And honestly, it's all over the media these days of the damage that ultra-processed food does to our bodies, does actually to our spirits, to sometimes our mental health, our physical health. And it's very difficult to escape ultra-processed food. And I started looking at ingredients in everything that I bought that had a label to it, and my kid is making funny faces behind the camera. I should just press this button and so it'll flip. Anyway, since reading the book, I've been so hyper aware of all of the ingredients on the labels of things that I buy that are not fresh foods, that are not produce or meats or anything like that. So I've been paying a lot more attention. But the things he talks about in this book, not just ultra-processing foods, not just what the food industry has done, but how that leads into weight issues and mental health, brain health, energy levels, what it does to our long-term health, what it does to children's health. And he puts in a lot of statistics based in the UK and the United States about the percentages of ultra-processed foods that each of the people in each of those areas of the world consume. Those are the 2 highest percentages of ultra-processed foods in the world. Although there are other countries around the world whose consumption of ultra-processed foods is just skyrocketing. Countries like India, some Southeast Asian countries, African countries, because of globalization and global corporate growth, if you want to call it growth, there are ultra-processed foods in every country. And it's pretty gross sometimes when you think about all of the chemicals and all of the ingredients in our foods. I've got an itchy nose today. Sorry about that. And it's cold because I'm cold. When we think about when did this all start? When did we start consuming so many ultra-processed foods? And he does talk about that. He talks about the era of the 60s and the 70s, even a little bit earlier, maybe late 50s, where Hungry Man dinners and TV dinners were produced, and all of a sudden there was so many convenience foods. So people didn't have to make everything from scratch anymore. And everything had salt and sugar and one chemical after another so it would be preserved. And, you know, we're all aware of ultra-processed foods, and we're all aware of the convenience of a fast meal or something you don't have to just spend hours over, and things that you can eat quickly. And even fast food, the preservatives and chemicals that are in fast foods, things that don't rot after years, that's a sure sign that it's ultra processed, and it's pretty gross. But he also talks about he and his brother, I believe his brother is also an MD, and he talks about they did a test on themselves where they ate ultra processed foods for a month, and then regular foods, whole foods, for another month. And they tested their blood, they tested all of their medical things, they tested their energy levels and kind of the brain fog and a lot of different things. And it was very clear how ultra-processed foods affect their physical bodies and their physical health. So, oh, yeah. And he covers so many topics that are fascinating, but he does it in a very engaging way. And the book is very easy to understand for the non-medical person. It's infuriating and it's terrifying all at the same time. So I wanted to quickly show you a couple of things that I pulled out of my cabinet, and I was more surprised than I thought in a good way. I thought it was going to be in a good way. So, one of our favorite things to eat in this house is pasta, and I can't eat very much pasta anymore. So if I do, it's very few types of pasta and quantities. But I have 2 types of pasta sauce in my cabinet, and I pulled them out. One of them is, and I'm going to put brands up here only to make an example out of it, not because I'm sponsored or have brand recognition, but this is Ragu Old World style traditional pasta sauce. And I have eaten this since I was a child. And in all those years, I've read the labels before. And when I was an adult going out buying my own groceries, I bought Ragu because it was something that I was used to. And I have to admit, I pulled this out of my cabinet thinking it was going to be filled with ultra-processed ingredients and one chemical after another after another. And I was pleasantly surprised. So let me read you this. Ingredients: tomato puree, parentheses, water, tomato paste, salt, olive oil, sugar, dehydrated onions, dehydrated garlic, spices, garlic powder, and onion powder. And that's it. I was expecting to read a bunch of chemicals that I couldn't pronounce. And when you see a list of chemicals on your labels, that is very clearly an ultra-processed food. Now, I'm not saying this is, a pure food or a whole food by any means. And the front of the label says, made with olive oil, and olive oil is an ingredient. No artificial colors or high fructose corn syrup. That's good, even though it does have sugar in the ingredient list. And it is non-GMO project verified. Sugar is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6th ingredient out of probably a dozen. So, and if you make your own spaghetti sauce or pasta sauce, quite often it calls for sugar because the tomatoes are so tangy and acidic that the sugar kind of cuts that a little bit. But I happen to like tomato sauce without sugar. I don't like the sweet tomato sauce. But this, I was pleasantly surprised by the ingredient list on Ragu traditional sauce. And the other one I pulled out, since my bariatric surgery, this was a pasta sauce from the shelf that was recommended because of its whole ingredients and the lack of preservatives and sugar. This is Rao's Homemade. This is mushroom and bell pepper sauce. I've also bought the Mariandrea sauce before, which has as few ingredients as this one. So let me read this label. It doesn't have anything on the outside as far as any claims or disclaimers. The ingredients are Italian whole peeled tomatoes, onions, mushrooms, red bell peppers, green bell peppers, olive oil, white wine, garlic, salt, basil, black pepper, oregano, crushed red peppers. There's no sugar in here. So there's no added sugar in this sauce. There's also no chemical ingredients from the label that I can see. And all of the ingredients are some of my favorites. It's got a lot more spices, so I'm sure that's going to add a lot more flavor. And I've eaten both of these types of sauce, and I actually like them both. But the Rao's Homemade seems to have more genuine, actual food ingredients. And I I'm a little suspicious about both because how would they last long enough in my cabinet for us to consume them if they didn't have some kind of preservatives in them? But maybe it's the salt. Salt content could be pretty high. Let's see. This one, the Rouse, has 0 added sugar. Sodium per 1/2 cup is 480 milligrams, so that's 21% of the daily value. So that's a 1/2 cup. The Ragu serving size is 1/2 cup, and the sodium is 460 milligrams, which is about 20%. It's about the same as the other one. And it does have 7 grams of added sugars per serving, which is only 2% of a daily value of sugars. So that almost dropped. Not too bad. Not too bad. And of course, I could have pulled out many, many types of foods from my cabinets to prove that there are ultra-processed ingredients in most of our processed foods. Anything coming out of a box or a bottle that has an ingredient label on it is ultra-processed. Most. So I'm hopeful for both of these foods. The other book I finished, I can't really talk about today, but I did finish Time of the Flies by Claudia Piñeiro. This is translated from Spanish by Frances Riddle. And this is for the Pineiro project. There is a group of fascinating and wonderful booktubers and fascinating and wonderful readers and subscribers who are in this project together. And this was the second book of Claudia Piñeiro's that we read in the Pineiro project. The first one was All Yours. Time of the Flies is a sequel to that. So if you are a fan of Piñeiro's work, I recommend reading All Yours and then Time of the Flies, even though this is her most recent publication in English. And it continues the story of Inez, who in All Yours is kind of involved in a crime, maybe not so accidentally. There are themes of adultery, marriage, relationships, patriarchy in Argentinian society, wealth and class. There's a lot of stuff going on in her books, and especially this one and the first one, All Yours. So I will probably wrap that up next weekend, I think, once the group gets to talk about our thoughts. And I'm currently reading 2 books right now. I'm sure I'll start my next audiobook when I go back to work on Tuesday. I'm staying home on Monday. But I am not in the middle, but reading A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This is part of the banned book club that is happening over on Fable, which is a great platform to run book clubs. And this was started by MJ at Reading This Life. And there's now a fantastic group of readers on the Fable group, in the Fable group. And I happened to step out of the group because I was overloaded with bookish scheduling and life. So I did pull myself out of the group, but I am still reading along. I'm still reading this one. I'm still paying attention to what they're reading. I just may not really participate in that because I'm trying to pare down a little bit. But this continues the story of Feyre and Tamlin and From the Court of Thorns and Roses. It is a series, so yes, read them in order. You won't get it if you don't. So reading that one, great book for a fantasy escape. And I continue to read Any Human Power by Amanda Scott. This is a book that was sent to me by Book Publicity Services. Kelsey Butts is the agent there that sent me this book. This is the second one I've received from her to read and review. So far, so good. I'm slow going with this one kind of on purpose because I feel like I'm savoring it a little bit more. But these are the only 2 books I have on the go, so I probably will speed myself up with that one. So those are the 2 books I finished and the 2 books I have currently reading, but I have 2 books I'm going to be starting soon. And these are both either a reading group book or a buddy read. The first one is the Pineiro Project. We are continuing. We'll be starting on December 7th, I believe. And this is Thursday Night Widows by Claudia Piñeiro. Claudia Piñeiro is a crime writer, an Argentinian crime writer, and she's very well known for that. And we are reading her books that have been translated into English. This one was published in 2005. The English translation came out in 2009. And somewhere along the way, Pineiro changed publishers and translators. So this one is published by Bitter Lemon Press, as was the book All Yours, and it was translated by Miranda France, who also translated All Yours. So the synopsis of this book from the back cover. 3 bodies lie at the bottom of a swimming pool in a gated country estate near Buenos Aires. Under the gaze of 15 security guards, the pampered residents of Cascade Heights lead a charmed life of parties and tennis tournaments, ignoring the poverty outside the perimeter wall. Claudia Piñeiro's novel easily foreshadowed a criminal case that generated a scandal in the Argentine media. But this is more than a tale about crime. It is a psychological portrait of a middle class living beyond its means and struggling to conceal deadly secrets. Set during the post-9/11 economic meltdown in Argentina, this story will resonate among credit-crunched readers of today. That I can relate to. Thursday Night Widows by Claudia Piñeiro. And the other book I will be embarking on with Gareth from Books, Songs, and Other Magic. I can't wait for this one. And we've been chit-chatting on Voxer so far, and honestly, Gareth, having a blast. This is Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. It's going to be a reread for me, and he and I are going to buddy read this in the month of December. This is a classic from 1952. It's a masterpiece of commentary and analysis of American racism and invisibility of Black men in our society in the 50s. I can't wait to get back into this book. I've still got my old tabs in there, but this is an incredibly compelling, I have highlights in there too, compelling and poignant and enraging book that is completely ripe for discussion, and I can't wait to talk about this with Gareth. So that is it for me for this week. Let me know in the comments below what you think about any of the books I talked about or anything that I'm currently reading or any of the buddy reads coming up, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye, everybody.